Hello, this is Sylvester Mackay, and you're watching the Multimedia Projects. Oh, Chronicle. The project is to watch the Chronicles. The Chronicles is to listen to the project. I mean, the thing is, you're watching something, enjoy it. Bye.
Greetings, everyone. Well, it's Timey-Wimey Tuesday again. This time around, not Blu-rays, but books. Yes, as most of you will know, the world of Doctor Who novels is vast, absolutely vast. Now, as most of you will know, I've been collecting the Target books for quite some time and basically kind of focusing on the adaptations of the televised stories. But there's a lot of other stories as well. In particular, during the Wilderness years in the 90s, Virgin Books was publishing the New Adventures, featuring the Seventh Doctor. I didn't get any of those. I just mentioned for historical context. Alongside those, they were publishing a series called The Missing Adventures, which featured the previous 6 Doctors in adventures intended to slot in between the televised stories. Then, shortly after the TV movie came out, Virgin lost the license. BBC Books decided to do it themselves, so they started publishing a series of current Doctor adventures featuring the 8th Doctor, and then a series of what they called past Doctor adventures featuring the previous 7. So basically doing the same thing, just with the then current Doctor and relegating the 7th Doctor to past Doctor adventure status. Why do I mention this? Well, because I got a bunch of them. I don't have a lot of them. It's an area of Doctor Who literature I haven't really dived into very much, but because I was mainly focusing on the Target novelizations, I kind of wanted to focus on one section of Doctor Who literature at a time. But occasionally a deal pops up where you just can't resist. In this case, it was Annetta, my ex, Rosie's mom. She's a huge used book fan, so she tends to go to used bookstores all the time. And a little while back, she found a stack of Doctor Who books, just a bunch of random ones. Neither of us had any idea what they were. It was just kind of a bunch of different stories featuring a variety of doctors, and she asked me if I would want to get them. So I paid her, I don't know, $20. It was like some stupidly small amount considering what they were. And she gave them to me. And then in addition to that, she had also found another kind of cool Doctor Who item that she thought I might like and threw that into the mix. What is that other non-book item? Well, stay tuned to the end of the video and you will find out. So, some new Doctor Who books. Well, some new old Doctor Who books. Today on the Multimedia Chronicles. Welcome back. So, first off, I got a trio of books from what is called the History Collection. So I naturally assumed historical adventures. So we'll go through them all one by one in a moment here. But each one of these features a different Doctor. So we got one with the first Doctor, one with the second Doctor, one with the 6th Doctor. And as I was looking at these, I realized, wait a minute, I recognize the sort of cover style of this. I took a look on my shelf, and sure enough, I actually have one of them. This one, I think, was sent to me by a viewer a while back. It is the English Way of Death, starring the 4th Doctor, as you can see, part of the History Collection, which you can see at the bottom. So I was kind of curious about the origins of, well, this and the other ones that I got. So, prior to doing this video, I did a little bit of digging around. There's a lot of great Doctor Who fan curated wikis out there, just absolute wealth of information. So I was taking a look at the TARDIS wiki and the discontinuity guide to kind of figure out where all these stories fit into the continuity of the televised stories, and also figure out what, if they were a reprint, where they originated from. So this particular one was part of Virgin Books' aforementioned Missing Adventures line. It is the 20th in that line, published in 1996, and takes place in between The Creature from the Pit and The Nightmare of Eden. Which is kind of funny because I actually just got the season that those two stories are from, so very cool. Well, on Blu-ray anyway. I've had them on DVD for ages. So if you're curious as to what the original cover looked like, it looked like this. Very nice. I gotta admit, I actually like the original cover designs of these a lot better than the sort of just basic Photoshop cover they did for the reprints. The other thing I noticed is, look at that logo. It looks kind of similar to another logo we were looking at recently, doesn't it? It almost seems like the Diamond logo is everybody's favorite logo, or at least generally considered to be one of the definitive Doctor Who logos. So, kind of cool. Anyway, this is the one I've had for a while. Let's take a look at the new ones we got. So next up we have The Witch Hunters. So as you may guess, this one takes place during the Salem witch trials. It was published by the BBC in 1998 as part of their Past Doctor Adventures line, of which this was the 9th of that line. Also notable in that this is apparently the first BBC Past Doctor adventure to feature the original TARDIS crew. Yeah, so it's the Doctor, Susan, Barbara, and Ian. Very cool. So looking forward to that. And if you'd like to see how it originally appeared, it looked like that. Yeah, the BBC ones used kind of a variation of the 1996 logo, which itself was a variation of the early 70s logo that the Third Doctor used. So, quite nice. Next up, we have a second Doctor adventure, The Roundheads, which is set in the aftermath of the English Civil War, and features the second Doctor, along with Ben, Polly, and Jamie. Now, of course, knowing that it was that TARDIS crew, you know it's got to be pretty early on in the second Doctor's adventures. Specifically, it's set in between the Macra Terror and the Faceless Ones. This was the 6th of the BBC's Past Doctor adventures, originally published in 1997. And here's a look at that cover. Wow, quite a lot more colorful than what we got here. Although, honestly, the more kind of muted colors here, I don't know, feel more historical somehow, if that makes sense. I don't know. We always view the past as being in perpetual black and white, right? Or at least muted colors. I should mention also, if we take a look at the back cover of the Roundheads, the original publication, you can see at the bottom there, it actually tells you on the back of the cover what TV stories it fits in between. For whatever reason, in the reprints, they didn't. They don't tell you that. So I had to do some digging around to find out what stories they took place in between. And sometimes it wasn't obvious. They just didn't, nobody seemed to know officially. So that's where I would go to the discontinuity guide, where they really dig into the continuity aspects of all the different Doctor Who stories, novels, TV show, everything. And yeah, thanks to that, I was able to find most of them. And then also the TARDIS Wiki that I mentioned before also mentions most of the time what stories that go in between. So this next one is number 40 in the Past Doctor adventures. Now things are going to get a little bit timey-wimey here. We're going to be jumping around in the continuity a little bit, just because of the nature of how these reprints were organized. I want to kind of cover the History Collection ones first, and then we'll dive into the other ones after. So this is an adventure featuring the 6th Doctor. Takes place partly in World War II, and kind of continues on from events from 2 previous publications, one of which was a Virgin story, and the other was another Past Doctor adventure. So, we'll start at the end and work our way back. So we have Shadow in the Glass, the original publication of which was The Shadow in the Glass. I don't know why they dropped the for the reprint, but anyway, yeah, so this one takes place partly in the Second World War, features the 6th Doctor and Brigadier Alistair Gordon Lethbridge Stewart. Yes. So, this was a tricky one to figure out where it fit into the continuity of everything. So we'll come back to this in a little bit, because I kind of want to cover the other parts of the trilogy first, so we'll come back to that. And if you're wondering when it was originally published, 2001. So jumping back into part 2 of this unofficial World War II trilogy, we have, from 1999, Players, also featuring the Sixth Doctor, and who else? Oh, Winston Churchill. That's right, Winston Churchill is in this. Now, this was notable in that it was one of the first times, if not the first time, that Winston Churchill actually figured into a story prominently, in this case in an adventure with the Sixth Doctor. Now, of course, we've seen Churchill show up several times in the new series, but he also appeared quite a few times in the books and in some of the audio adventures as well. Players is also notable in that it is the first time in official Doctor Who fiction that Season 6B was mentioned. Season 6B, of course, being the further adventures of the Second Doctor in between the War Games and Spearhead from Space. The idea being that before he regenerated, he was pulled out of the vortex by the Time Lords and sent off to do some secret missions for them for a while. It's one of the ways they've tried to reconcile the Second Doctor's appearances in the Five Doctors and the Two Doctors, where he seemed to have memories of events that he shouldn't have had memories of because they would have been at the time of his regeneration into the Third Doctor, or to have knowledge of certain events. He would have had to have been there later, or so. Yeah, so anyway, they came up with this idea of Season 6B. It's like, well, what if he went off and did some secret missions for the Time Lords, which kind of fits in with, in particular, what's going on in the Two Doctors. It actually makes quite a lot of sense. And he's got Jamie back with him. Jamie didn't know about the Time Lords except for the War Games, but supposedly they had their memories erased at the end of the War Games, so how would he know who the Time Lords are? He would have forgotten that. But, yeah. So I guess in Season 6B, Jamie was brought back to go along with the Doctors. I mean, does that mean that Jamie now remembers all of his adventures? They just restore all of his memories so that he could hang out with the Doctor? I don't know. Who cares? We got fun after-the-fact adventures with the Doctor and Jamie. And this is the first book, or I guess fiction of any kind, that ever mentioned in any kind of official capacity Season 6B. So, kind of cool. Kind of notable. Especially considering this is just one of a random selection of books that I got in a pile from Annetta, and it's kind of a cool one to have. Anyway, this is part 2 of the unofficial World War II trilogy, and this is what the cover originally looked like. Yeah, once again, I definitely prefer the original covers. Yeah, the BBC covers kind of went with either sort of stylized designs or kind of Photoshop-y designs. They all have this really nice matte finish to them as well. So very classy little books, I gotta say. So in terms of the television continuity, this is set in between The Mark of the Rani and The Two Doctors, appropriately enough, considering the mention of Season 6B. Now, if you're wondering about the third one in the trilogy, Shadow in the Glass, this one was tricky. Because, of course, the Doctor is solo in this one, and he was never solo in the televised adventures, so where the heck does this fit into the continuity? Well, there's a lot of speculation about that, but according to the article in the Discontinuity Guide and some of the user comments afterwards, it seems that the most comfortable place to slot it in is, in fact, not in between the televised adventures, but actually in between some of the audio adventures and other novels. Specifically back near the very beginning of the Big Finish range, when they were still doing just a monthly series. Each one would feature a different Doctor every month. A story called The Spectre of Lanyon Moor, which was the 9th of the monthly range. Yeah, they were still in single digits when that one came out. So anyway, this one appears to take place shortly after that story. And if we're going to work in the audio adventures and novels and TV shows all into one massive unified continuity, this would fit in between that audio adventure and the 4th BBC Past Doctor adventure entitled Business Unusual. Confused yet? Yeah, welcome to the world of Doctor Who expanded fiction. Now, if you're wondering about part 1 of this unofficial trilogy, well, we have parts 2 and 3 featuring the 6th Doctor. Oh, we got the 6th Doctor and the Brigadier 6th Doctor and Winston Churchill. So, of course, part 1 of the trilogy features the 7th Doctor and was the 4th of the Virgin New adventures entitled Time Worm Exodus. Alas, the vast majority of the Virgin publications, both the New Adventures and Missing Adventures, have yet to be reprinted, which makes them very difficult to collect, in particular the later ones, because a lot of the later ones didn't have multiple printings. They just had the one printing, and that was it. Some of the earlier ones had reprints, so you can sometimes find reprint editions of those if the earlier printings are too expensive. But, yeah, picking up that collection nearly 30 years after the fact is a bit of a daunting task. Anyway, carrying on, I promise the rest of them aren't as confusing as that unofficial trilogy, but let's see what else we got here. Oh, I should mention also, in terms of the reprint, so this, of course, was put out as part of the History collection, which was, I don't know, several books featuring Doctors 1 through 8, I think. Got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, so it's Doctors 1 through 8, all past Doctor adventures. Players was published in 2013 as a part of the 50th anniversary collection. So it was basically one story featuring each of the 11 Doctors at the time, so most of which were reprints. Yeah, quite nice. I'd actually like to pick up the rest of those, just because, quite frankly, I think it's probably a cheaper alternative than trying to track down the original printings of them. So the next one we have is a 5th Doctor adventure, once again published as part of the 50th anniversary collection, Fear of the Dark. And this one features, I think it's just the Doctor, Tegan, and Nyssa. Yeah. And the wikis I looked at didn't seem to say definitively, but they did have a lot of information about the story continuity and sort of things that are mentioned in the story. And given who the TARDIS crew is at the time, it's post-Adric but pre-Turlough, so that kind of narrows it down. There's a few other little things, like there's references to Snake Dance and things like that, so it's obviously post-Snake Dance. So it appears to take place in between Snake Dance and Modern Undead. There you go. And here's a look at the original cover, which I think is pretty snazzy, actually. I like that. Very dark and mysterious. And you get kind of half skull with the Doctor there. Very cool. As opposed to this one, which is just basically a Photoshop with a star chart. So I don't know. Anyway, cool stuff. Oh, and it was originally published in 2003, and it's number 57 in the Doctor Who Past Doctor Adventures. Yeah. Next up, we finally have a reprint of another Virgin novel, one of the Past Doctor Adventures. We have a sequel to one of the all-time great Doctor Who stories of all time, The Pyramids of Mars, specifically Sands of Time. And who's in this one? This is part of the Monster Collection. You take a look there, the Monster Collection. Very nice. So this also features the 5th Doctor, along with Tegan and Nyssa, and in this case actually takes place between Arc of Infinity and Snake Dance, so it just kind of slides right in between there. But yeah, this might be, I'm thinking this one and The Witch Hunters might be fun ones to read for Halloween season. I don't know, we'll see what my schedule is like. I tend to have precious little time for reading these days. I really gotta just kind of make more time for that. I've got a stack like this of books next to my bed that are part of my bedtime reading, but of course you read before bed, it makes you tired, and you end up not reading very much. So I gotta set aside just like some reading time, dedicated reading time, you know? Because Lord knows I've got enough books that I'd love to read before I die, you know? Yeah, so anyway, here's the original cover for that one. I actually much prefer the Virgin cover design on these. I mean, first off, they got that snazzy, shiny diamond logo, but they're also actual proper painted covers, which is something that we lost when they went to the BBC range. They went more in a Photoshop-y direction. They definitely go kind of, you know, haywire with the creativity with the design of those BBC books, but I don't know, I like the simplicity of the design of the Missing Adventures line, and the consistency of design as well, and the fact we just get these nice little paintings of the various characters. So that's very cool. So in terms of the original publication, speaking of which, this originally came out in 1996 and was the 22nd of the Missing Adventures books. So for me, it's just exciting that it's a sequel to Pyramids of Mars. So, I mean, presumably, I'm guessing Sutek comes back in this to raise hell again. Yeah, Sutek was a pretty scary villain because he was one of the few villains the Doctor encountered that he was clearly outmatched by. You know, they like Sutek could very easily have won in that story, and the Doctor had a hell of a time figuring out how he was going to defeat him. So, really, really good story. One of the all-time greats. And from season 13, the Gothic horror season, one of the all-time great seasons. Certainly a favorite of mine. So next up, we have kind of an interesting beast that came out for the 50th anniversary in 2013 by Alastair Reynolds. We have The Harvest of Time. Yeah. So Master fans might want to take note of this one because it features the Master. It features the first appearance in any kind of official Doctor Who canon of a female incarnation of the Master. And it's kind of funny because we just learned in the show that the Doctor may have had a lot more incarnations in the past prior to the first Doctor that we know than we've been aware of prior to that. The first hint, of course, we had of anything like that was in the brain of Morbius, when he was having the mind battle with Morbius, and we saw all these incarnations of the Doctor that we'd never seen before. That has since been confirmed in canon that those are past incarnations of the Doctor. In fact, there's even a very dusty book. There's even a book, Forgotten Lives, that tells you stories of those past Doctors. And there's another one, there's a sequel to that as well, which unfortunately I don't have. But the reason I mention that is because it is revealed in this story that across various different time streams, the Master apparently has somewhere in the vicinity of 470 incarnations. Crazy. The other thing that's interesting about this story is it's actually a third Doctor adventure featuring Joe Grant and the Brigadier, and Mike Yates and Sergeant Benton. The whole gang is here. And the reason that's interesting is because around the time of the new series, the BBC sort of shied away from doing new adventures featuring past Doctors. It just kind of left that up to Big Finish to do. So this came out in the middle of the 50th anniversary, and it's not a current Doctor story. It's actually a third Doctor story, which is great for me because I love the third Doctor. I mean, third Doctor is my favorite, right up there with Tom Baker. I'd say I honestly am hard-pressed to choose between them because I love both of those eras so much that I just say they're both my favorite. You know? So for me, it's an absolute delight to have a new third Doctor adventure, and one that just kind of, you know, turns the lore on its head a little bit at the same time. It's kind of cool. Also interesting to note, now remember, this was the big 50th anniversary year. There was a lot of Doctor Who stuff coming out that year. Doctor Who magazine held a poll amongst their readers asking, well, what do you think was the best new Doctor Who printed fiction to come out this year? And they said this one, right here. In issue number 479 of Doctor Who magazine, they published the results, and Harvest of Time was voted by the readers as the best new Doctor Who fiction to come out that year. For the frickin' 50th anniversary. Of all the stories that came out, this one topped the poll. So very excited to have this. I'm going to have to, I mean, it's the 60th anniversary this year. Probably be a good time to read it. Yeah, so I might be checking this out. Is it just me, or does that spaceship look like a giant penis flying through space? Anyway, now, in terms of the continuity, it doesn't actually say anything on the back here. So I hit the discontinuity guide. I thought, well, let's see what the fans have to say and what they were able to piece together, just picking up on clues in the story. There doesn't seem to be a consensus, but purely logically speaking, looking at some of the arguments that the various fans had, things like referencing previous story, like previous televised stories, the time of year that it takes place in, primarily takes place in fall, winter, I think, and also, of course, all the stuff about the Master and where the Master is in his or her incarnations, as the case may be. It seems to take place in between the Curse of Peladon and the Sea Devils. So just drop it in between there, and it should fit fairly comfortably. But it's not like set in stone. It seems a little bit fluid from what I was reading in the discontinuity guide. So anyway, in looking at these past Doctor adventures, that's one of the things that's of particular interest to me, is where are they supposed to slot into the continuity, you know? So that to me is pretty cool. And new Third Doctor adventure, so how can you go wrong there? Now, I should mention, I do have a handful of the old Virgin adventures and BBC adventures. Let me show you what I've got here. I've probably shown these before, but I'll show you again. Now, the new adventures took place after the end of the original TV series in 1989, and I guess leading up to the TV movie, roughly. So there's really no TV stories that they fall in between. They're meant to be the story after the series. So beyond that, they basically just read them all, watch them, read them all in order. Start at the beginning and work through all, 50, 60, however many they did. So the earliest one I have is this one, Deceit, by Peter Darville Evans. And there we go. Very nice. It takes place in the 25th century during near the end of the Dalek War, and yeah, cool. I don't know. I think it was just another random pickup. I didn't pick it up for any specific reason or anything about the story that stood out to me. I was like, oh, cool, new adventure. I'll grab that. Maybe Dalek story. I don't know. Anyway. So this one is number 13 in the Doctor Who New Adventures, featuring the 7th Doctor and Ace, and was published in 1993. So there you go. Next one I have is Blood Harvest by Terrance Dicks. Yeah, definitely Doctor Who royalty right there. He wrote so much Doctor Who fiction. Wrote a lot of the televised stories, a good chunk of the Target novelizations, and a bunch of the new adventures, and I think even some past Doctor adventures as well. So this particular one is number 28 of the new adventures, but quite cool. This one I did pick up based on sort of interest in the story. I was like, ooh, cool, vampire story. And apparently it ties into the State of Decay. Yeah, the story from Tom Baker's final season. So it's further adventures of vampires in the Doctor Who universe as established by State of Decay. So they're, descendants of the great vampire from State of Decay. So this particular one, I believe, also has Bernice Summerfield in it. Yeah, this has Bernice Summerfield, the Doctor, and Ace, and takes place primarily in 1929 Chicago during Prohibition era. Yeah, it takes place in 1929 in Chicago, Al Capone, Prohibition, all of that. And the Doctor and Ace are apparently running a joint called Docks and selling illegal booze. Yeah, that's something you probably wouldn't see in the TV show. The Virgin Adventures tended to get a little edgier with some of the mature content. For better or worse. Some people seem to embrace that, others did not. But anyway, so we got Blood Harvest, and tying into that, we actually have the very first Missing Adventures novel from Virgin Publishing, Goth Opera, which actually ties directly into Blood Harvest. So they did it kind of as an intentional tie-in. So if you want the rest of the story of this, pick up this, to cross-promote with their, at the time, brand new Missing Adventures line. So Goth Opera came out in 1994, and not only does it tie into the new adventure Blood Harvest, but it also takes place, yep, you guessed it, between Snake Dance and Modern Undead, once again featuring the 5th Doctor, Tegan, and Nyssa. So, very nice. Really like that. But if you take a look, I don't know how well you can see, but if you take a look on the back there, you can see it tells you right on the back which stories it fits in between, right? So, I don't know why they didn't do that for the ones that they reprinted. Oh well. Next up, we have a pretty neat one from 1996. Downtime. Yeah. Now, if that sounds vaguely familiar, that's because it's a novelization based on this film, which was originally a fan film, but kind of an officially licensed fan film, I guess, from Real Time Pictures, featuring a lot of Doctor Who alumni reprising their roles, such as Deborah Watling as Victoria Waterfield, And we had Nicholas Courtney as the Brigadier. We got Elizabeth Sladen as Sarah Jane Smith. So it's like all these Doctor Who companions and guest stars coming back to do this story that effectively turns the Yeti adventures of the 60s into a trilogy. So it's the Great Intelligence and the Yeti are back, and it's up to the many friends of Doctor Who to save the day. So very cool. It's very well received. It's definitely a fan favorite. And I guess about a year after it came, it wasn't very long, but a year after, Virgin did a novelization of it, written by Mark Platt, no less, who's one of my favorite Doctor Who authors, because he wrote the what, in my opinion, was wonderful 26th season story, Ghostlight. He was actually, it was actually a wonderful Doctor Who success story. He was just a fan who sent in a script, and Andrew Cartmel liked it and greenlit it, and that was that. And then he also went on to write the novelization of his own script and the novelization of Downtime. Oh yeah, also notable is this was directed by Christopher Barry, who actually directed a lot of the 60s episodes of Doctor Who. So this really was like just a huge Doctor Who reunion for a lot of people. Anyway, cool. Whoops, cool to have that. And the novelization, which essentially expands on the story considerably. Oh yeah, it actually says here the original movie was actually written by Mark Platt as well. That's what I figured. It makes sense. But yeah, very cool. All it says in terms of continuity is it takes place after Victoria's departure in Fury from the Deep. Yes, however, the story takes place in modern days, so like mid-90s at the time. So, very cool. This is a lovely DVD edition that was sent to me by a viewer a while back. It has not only the special, but all kinds of behind-the-scenes stuff. And then, I can't remember if the novelization brings the Doctor into it. Because I know the Doctor is not in the original special. It was the one thing they couldn't get the rights to, is to have the actual Doctor in it. But, oh yeah, the novelization is actually pretty neat, because it actually does have photos of the cast in there. Very cool. Oh yeah, they also got Jack Watling back as Professor Travers. His last appearance in Doctor Who. So the original Professor Travers from the old Yeti stories. Very cool. You got Jeffrey Beavers, who of course played the Master in many, well, in one Doctor Who story on TV, but in many Big Finish audio adventures. Very cool. And you got the Brigadier, and you got the original actress to play the Brigadier's daughter. Of course, recast for the TV show. But, what was it here? Oh yeah, and the lovely Sarah Jane Smith. There you go. So yeah, definitely a treat for fans. And then finally, I do have a couple of the BBC books as well, so let's take a quick look at those. So oddly, I don't really have any of the past Doctor adventures that the BBC put out, but I do have one single solitary 8th Doctor adventure, and that is a little tale called Hope. Very nice. See, look at this. Okay, this one doesn't have the embossed logo. Maybe they weren't all embossed, but very nice cover design on these, you know. Yeah, see, this one's not just a Photoshop thing. This is actually kind of some proper artwork, but very, very cool. I like this one a lot. So this is the 53rd of the 8th Doctor adventures that BBC Books put out, published in 2002. Now, if I remember correctly, they continued doing them up until about 2006. And then haven't done them since. Well, they kind of switched formats. They switched over to, yeah, they had like sort of the hardcover style like that for the new event, or the new Doctor Who stories, and then these ones with the new logo. And I'm not sure what they're doing these days, if they're even still really doing them at all. Maybe is it all Titan Books now? I haven't been keeping up. I've been so focused on the past, I haven't been looking at the present, so how timey-wimey of me, eh? Last but most certainly not least, speaking of anniversaries, I have this one. The Infinity Doctors. Like, wow, how many Doctors are there in this one? All of them ever. Throughout eternity, apparently. No, not really. This is kind of a strange beast. This came out for the 35th anniversary. It came out in the normal slot where a Past Doctor adventure would have been with the BBC books, but it's not technically a Past Doctor adventure, but it also is. Just let that stew for a moment. So this came out in 1998, and in between the 16th and 17th Past Doctor adventures. However, that said, it's kind of meant to be like a standalone story. But if you were going to put them on your shelf in publication date, you would put this in between number 16 and 17 of the Past Doctor adventures. So the reason this sort of is and isn't a Past Doctor adventure is because, as opposed to other adventures where it's really obvious which Doctor it is, that is kept very deliberately ambiguous in this. The idea was, as an anniversary story, and it has to do with Gallifrey and the Time Lords, it's just an epic story. But the reason was, the writer, Lance Parkin, wanted the reader to kind of be able to slot their own personal favorite Doctor into the role of the Doctor. So it's very ambiguous which Doctor it is. I don't think it's never definitively stated which one it is. He's only ever referred to as the Doctor. And it takes place across multiple time periods, as I recall. But yeah, so it's kind of a strange beast in that you can't really say it's the nth Doctor. It's just referred to as the Infinity Doctor. So I haven't read it yet, mainly because I'm a little intimidated just by the size of the text for my old man eyes. Look how freaking tiny this is. What is this, the 1800s? Bigger print, please. I mean, you look at the Virgin books. They have nice big print, very very lovely, easy to read. But then you look at the reprints. The reprints have even bigger print. Yay! So, I don't know, can we get like a large print reprint of the Infinity Doctors, please? And then maybe I'll be more inclined to read it. So anyway, interesting stuff. And there is an honorable mention I wanted to mention here in talking about where all of these fit into the continuity. So, yeah, this one, who the heck knows? It fits in everywhere. This one, much like the Virgin New Adventures, just read them in the order of publication date, and that's pretty much it. The 8th Doctor adventures, to my knowledge, were done in much the same way as the 7th Doctor adventures that Virgin did, just featuring the 8th Doctor instead and continuing their adventures that way. But speaking of continuity, kind of looking at where all these books and everything fit in between the continuity of the televised stories, it reminded me of a book I picked up a while back, which I think I've mentioned once or twice before, Doctor Who, A History of the Universe. Now this came out in 1996, I believe. Yes, 1996. Oh, look, Lance Parkin again. And what this is it attempts to present the history of the universe according to Doctor Who. Now, normally, all of these stories, all of these books and everything, all these TV adventures, we follow the history of the universe with the Doctor. So we're seeing his life story and how he has experienced the universe throughout time. This takes all of those adventures up to date at the time, which is the televised stories and all of the I think Virgin was it was still Virgin, so they had done 50 new adventures, and they had done I don't know how many actually we do know how many. Look, it's an ad for the Sands of Time, which of course was the 22nd missing adventure. So yeah, so they were chugging along with those, but they still had quite a ways to go. Big Finish wasn't even a thing yet. I mean, I think they existed, but they weren't doing the official Doctor Who audio adventures yet. So what this does is takes all the televised adventures, all of the new adventures up to number 50, all of the missing adventures up to number 22, and attempts to present a definitive timeline of the history of the universe according to Doctor Who fiction. I have not read this whole book. I've just kind of flipped through it and taken a look at this and that and the other thing, but tons and tons and tons of additional notes along there, and he had very specific rules that he was going by as far as reconciling conflicting continuities, such as the 3 different stories of the destruction of Atlantis. Yeah, it's all over the place. But He basically tries to make sense of all of it and present the definitive history book of the universe from the Big Bang up until the year like 10 billion something, or 10 million something, I think, in one handy dandy book. Very cool. I can only imagine if they were going to do this now and factor in all of the rest of the Virgin books, all of the BBC books, everything tied into the new series, all the big Finnish audios. I mean, it would be a book like this thick. Like, it would be ridiculous. They'd have to do it in multiple volumes. But anyway, an interesting idea that I think now, because of the just overwhelming amount of Doctor Who fiction that has come out since 1996, and including everything that had come out to that point, would just be borderline impossible to reconcile. But that's why we have websites like the Discontinuity Guide, where it does attempt to make sense of everything, but in terms of putting it all into some kind of definitive chronological history of the universe according to the world of Doctor Who, that would be quite a task. So anyway, major props to Lance Parkin for at least trying to make sense of what had come out thus far in 1996. Wow, it's amazing to think that this book is almost 30 years old. This was 33 years into the history of Doctor Who. There has been another 27 years of history since this book was published. And a lot more added than had existed at the time. And can you imagine if you tried to incorporate the comics into it as well? Like, oh my god. It's just crazy. The early comic strips you couldn't, because they were clearly not a part of the same continuity. But at the very least, the books, the audios, the TV adventures, you could do that if you wanted to. I will leave that for someone else. Well, it turns out that someone else is Lance Parkin again. Unbeknownst to me, until I was looking up a nice cover pic of the one that I have, I discovered that he has actually done no less than 2 more editions of the Doctor Who History of the Universe. The latest edition came out in 2018 and 2019. So yes, as I postulated, it did indeed take multiple volumes. So the 4th edition, which is the most current, encompasses 3 volumes, each volume covering a different sort of chunk of history, about 500 pages of very small text, apparently, loads of footnotes, and by golly, he actually did it. It incorporates every single televised episode up to the end of the 12th Doctor's era, along with every single novel, missing adventure, new adventure, all the comic books from IDW, Titan, and the Doctor Who magazine strips, and every single big Finnish audio adventure up to that point. Apparently, the entire work is over 1 million words, spread across 3 volumes of about 500 pages of very small text apiece. Holy moly, I need this monstrosity in my collection. That sounds amazing. Now, I promised you a special treat. Oh, we haven't even seen the special treat yet. This is just all extra stuff I wanted to add into the mix. The special treat is underneath this pile of books here. Just give me a second. Just move this. I thought this might be something that would be fun to do as a live stream, maybe as a, time sped up video at some point. But whenever I need to mellow out and get kind of zen, you can't go wrong with a jigsaw puzzle. Yeah, check it out. A 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle, in this case featuring Doctors 1 through 13 and the TARDIS. And, yeah, very cool stuff. And then if we look on the back here, you can see like that. So I guess they had 3 puzzles that came out at the same time. What was this? This was an episode guide. So a TARDIS-shaped image representing every single Doctor Who story up to that point, supposedly. That doesn't seem like it's enough stories. Every single New Who story up to that point. Yeah, because of course the classic series doesn't exist. And then we have this one, which is basically postcards. I like this idea. Postcards of places the Doctor's been. And, yeah, that's kind of fun. I like that. So anyway, this one I think is sort of the most dynamic of the designs, where we have the Doctors and the TARDIS. So that'll be a fun one to do at some point. And I think, if I'm not mistaken... Oh, yeah, look at this. We actually do have a lovely poster of the artwork. Very nice. And, yeah, it looks like someone was already doing the puzzle. It wasn't me. It came like this. So, anyway, we got this used. Again, just something Annetta found in her travels that she thought I would like. And, thanks for keeping your eye out for stuff like that, Annetta, if you happen to be watching. Really appreciate it. So hopefully there's no pieces missing, is what I was going to say. So I guess that's something we'll find out whenever we do that puzzle. Now, after all that, some of you are probably going to want some of that stuff for your collections, aren't you? Of course you are. Well, it's going to be quite a novel-length list of Amazon links, I think, in the description. But I'll do my best to find everything for you and put them all on the list. As always, I really appreciate those of you who use those links, because it does help to support the show. And, yeah. So thanks. Appreciate it. Alrighty, folks. I think this one has gone on more than long enough. Hope you enjoyed. Yeah, read till your eyeballs fall out. We got a lot of good books to read here. Now I gotta figure out where the heck I'm gonna put them on the shelf. I'm really running out of space. I'm thinking we might need to get a second shelving unit for all the Doctor Who stuff, because it's just that ridiculously massive of a franchise, and I love it. Anyway, have yourselves a great day or night. Hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Until then, sayonara.